The FDA has pulled an oral decongestant, or excuse me, they're recommending that it gets pulled. This is from NBC News. A key ingredient in many over-the-counter cold and allergy medications called phenylephrine, yay, doesn't work to get rid of nasal congestion. An FDA advisory panel has concluded the unanimous vote, which specifically declared oral formulations of phenylephrine ineffective, is expected to disrupt the market for over-the-counter cold and allergy remedies, where consumers largely prefer pills over nasal sprays. Phenylephrine, found in drugs including Sudafed PE, Vicks, NyQuil, Sinex, nighttime sinus relief, and Benadryl Allergy Plus congestion, is the most popular oral decongestant in the United States, generating almost $1.8 billion with a B dollars in sales last year, according to data presented Monday by the FDA officials. Of course, this was a little bit ago. The drug is thought to relieve congestion by reducing the swelling of blood vessels in the nasal passages, but the panel's vote reflects damning evidence provided by the FDA that found that when phenylephrine is taken orally, a very small amount of the drug actually reaches the nose to relieve congestion. The FDA will now need to decide whether to revoke the drug's OTC designation as, quote, generally recognized as safe and effective. Obviously, the effective word being the questionable one there. This is a big deal, right?
It sure is.
What does this mean? Are we throwing out any of these drugs that we might have in our cabinet? Is that this is no longer safe? We need to worry about this, or what's going on?
Fortunately, it is not a matter of safety.
Okay.
So even as, somebody who's doing inventory management at a pharmacy, this has, struck me in more ways than not.
Yeah.
What do we do with all the products that currently contain it? I mean, we have products in our cabinet right now that contain it. So it's
literally here at your house, you mean?
Literally here.
Yeah.
So it's not the most surprising thing, but it has massive implications. So first and foremost, do not panic.
Yeah.
Again, like Tyler said, this is a matter of something that's just been out there a long time. It's not working super well. The funny thing is that even while we were in school, I do remember, because of phenylephrine's different indications, mainly in inpatient use, intravenous use, as a vasoconstrictor, they talked about its poor bioavailability at that time, or poor oral bioavailability.
Okay, so bioavailability means your body's ability to absorb it, right? And to use it.
Yes. And so even that discussion can get a little hectic, but for all intents and purposes, it's extensively metabolized in the gut, anywhere from 1 to 38. It's anywhere from 1 to 38% bioavailable. So
best case scenario, 38% of what you take is actually going to get in your bloodstream.
It seems as though that's at best case. So the implications there were, okay, well, because theoretically this has less side effects than its, counterpart, Sudafed or pseudoephedrine, well, you just increase the dose. Right. Increasing the dose does increase the bioavailability a little bit. However, then have the potential for more side effects at that point with this medication.
Sure.
It's just not ideal. At that point, you're better off just totally switching gears. So, because you're using the phenylephrine because of likely you didn't want the unwanted side effects of something else.
Okay, so phenylephrine was a gentler version of something else, of pseudoephedrine? Is that what it was?
Yes. So pseudoephedrine falls in this broad category of stimulants.
Yep.
And so structurally speaking, it is very similar to methamphetamine. And I'm sure many have heard Sudafed was it can be an integral part of actually making meth or methamphetamine.
That's why it all got pulled behind the counter.
Yes.
Right? Because it used to be out you could get it anytime you wanted.
Exactly. And even now, apparently, a lot of that is overblown.
Good.
In that, drug cartels and illicit drug creators, they have found more, cost-effective ways on their own to synthesize.
Yeah,
so I'm not so sure that the rush for, I'm not saying that we should change the way Sudafed is regulated, but at that point in time, there was a massive concern to protect the population from the dangers
Right.
of Sudafed.
Right.
But all of that's to say, Sudafed, again, is in this structural class of
Stimulants. Yeah.
and making minor changes to the molecule, again, get you closer to methamphetamine, it gets you closer to ephedrine, another product, another molecule that was available widely at one point that had an even worse side effect profile of, out of these medications. And then phenylephrine, they really kind of changed the structure.
Oh,
and so
okay.
it's not even really quite as structurally similar as some of the other ones that I mentioned. So it's kind of from the same family, but it's not really on a structural level quite as similar as I would have thought. So yeah, a lot of it again came from, I guess just to recap, there were issues with the Sudafed being diverted for the creation of methamphetamine. So there were these protective measures put into place at pharmacies, making it harder to purchase. So there was an immediate need for decongestants that were similar because Sudafed works.
Right.
So they thought that they were making something similar, but for decades, it looks like the research was shoddy at best.
Jeez.
And so here we are. It's funny. There's been pharmacists and groups and people that have been trying to get this pulled from the market for years, which is kind of wild.
It's taken this long, and it was a unanimous decision,
Mhm.
which like that. How often does that happen? So there are lots of people that feel very convinced, fully convinced that this is completely ineffective.
Yeah.
So just for the sake of argument, I've been taking it and it made me feel better.
Yeah.
Is that just, am I imagining it? Are we talking about placebo effect here?
I'm still not sure I'm willing to go that far yet either.
I mean, if it had 38% bioavailability, maybe my biochemistry was perfect.
Sure.
And it worked that well for me.
Sure. I guess there are absolutely no absolutes,
right?
I think anywhere. So that's tough. But at this point, if we had to bet, it probably wasn't doing a whole heck of a lot,
right?
But yeah, I'm sure that this has been quite jarring to those that always jump to Dayquil when they're sick. They always jump to Sudafed PE when they're sick.
They know their thing and they keep going to
it's a massive thing turned upside down on its head.
Yeah, it really this is a shock to the system.
Mm-hmm.
So this is oral only, correct? You were talking about is there a nasal version of it?
Nasal sprays.
Yes.
And those
Afrin? Is it Afrin?
Oh,
Afrin is technically something different.
Okay.
Oh, is it?
Yes. So
is that the one that burns when you use it?
That's how you know it's working. That's the old school train of thought.
I have a friend that swore by it, and one time I used it and was in so much pain for like 10 minutes, and then I could actually breathe. It was great, but I swore I was never doing that again because it hurt so badly.
Yeah, even something like Afrin, for example, different active ingredient, but that's something that you can't use every single day for the rest of your life. So it's like there's this big, you look at your pharmacy wall of decongestants and nasal sprays, like what do I pick?
Yeah.
People, they got a little bit of, if they could tolerate it or they didn't have a contraindication for it, maybe they got some regular pseudoephedrine.
Right.
Maybe they didn't want to take Sudafed all the time. They got some PE or phenylephrine. Maybe they had some of the nasal spray, some of the phenylephrine nasal spray. There's steroids. There's Afrin. So now it's like to pull such a big option. I think, I don't know. It's
a big deal.
There's some confusion. Even this separate article that I'm reading, he says it may be something that causes confusion from a patient point of view. If the main message is that this drug doesn't work, but if you administer it directly to the nasal passage, there is evidence that it does work.
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't work, if it's ingested in a pill form.
Well, no, that's the point, is that orally this just doesn't.
Yeah,
this doesn't do anything.
So they said, so then the question I would ask is, well, then why is it still on the shelves? And they're saying they can't pull it off the shelves because...
So this is an advisory group to the FDA.
Correct.
That has made this recommendation. It's up to the FDA if they actually remove the, whatever you want to call it, certification or labeling.
Well, so they say there's no outstanding risk. So it says since there does not appear to be an imminent safety risk, the FDA cannot use an emergency powers to pull the product off the market.
Well, I should hope not, because it's been on the market for decades. So if it's an imminent safety risk, then there's even more people that have things to answer for. Why should we trust anything? If this has been labeled safe and effective for years and years and years, and we're just now getting around to correcting this, how can I trust anything?
Tyler, I don't know how to answer that.
Okay, fair enough. Well, it's been a good show, guys. So, but I mean, that's a genuine concern. People get worried about this sort of thing, and this does speak to, people can bring up lobbying, and they can bring up all kinds of fun conspiracy theories too. This doesn't look good when something like this happens.
This didn't happen overnight, so it just is proof that how long it takes for something like this to really get traction. Did this continue to go to the back of the list?
Yeah,
so to speak. Was this low in order of importance? Because again, it wasn't hurting anybody. A lot of people swore by it. Every single manufacturer has a PE product.
Yep.
I mean, it's like such a mess, really.
That's amazing.
It is. And plus, again, people were taking this for the most part instead of Sudafed. And not that phenylephrine was the best alternative for individuals with high blood pressure, let's say. It's still, it was still, I guess, better in that sense that individuals who may have had additional risk in taking Sudafed were avoiding it for this reason, because there was another oral agent. Again, not that this is the go-to for hypertension.
Obviously. All right, so if I need allergy relief, what should I be doing at this point?
Yeah, so rest assured, there are still plenty of options over the counter. It just will depend on maybe something else that has worked for you in the past, or maybe, what is exactly causing the congestion in the first place.
Right, because it's not just allergies. It could be anything that's causing that nasal congestion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, common cold. There are a multitude of things that could lead there.
Okay.
So the safest saline nasal spray is a good example. Cheap. You can use that as an immediate alternative. It's basically just a saltwater spray.
Right.
Humidifiers can be used, something to put in your bedroom. You can change your head position, sleeping, try to elevate it a little bit further. And then from an over-the-counter product perspective, taking a look back at those.
Yeah.
Now the nasal corticosteroids are all available over the counter, whereas you used to need a prescription for them.
Right.
So if you have a little bit more severe congestion, maybe due to some seasonal allergies or whatever the case.
Live in Tennessee.
Or if you live in Tennessee, you can definitely try one of those. Flonase is kind of one of the most common there. You mentioned Afrin. Afrin, not ideal for an extended period of time. Would probably avoid that.
Yeah.
And then if you don't have the list of contraindications, you can go with something like Sudafed, because we know for sure that is effective. So,
but again, that's not a daily medication. That's not something you want to take on the regular.
Not necessarily. No.
Okay.
And even with Sudafed, it's really an abundance of caution that's used. If somebody that has cardiovascular disease, hypertension, you're exhibiting an abundance of caution by telling them not to use it. So there's some small studies that have showed that extended release formulations may have a little bit less of an effect on systolic blood pressure. So hear me out. I'm not saying to go get the extended release version, but again, it's not in every single situation that if you have high blood pressure and you take some Sudafed, that it's like this probably going to be
like taking foxglove, you will die.
Right. I don't think that that's the case, but still not in a position where I think it should be widely recommended.
Fair enough.
But for others, even children, it's generally safe. If you have very bad nasal congestion, there's not much else that works better than Sudafed.
Got it.
The bulb syringe. We should just bring back the bulb syringe.
You get the bulb?
Oh, to suction it out?
Yeah.
Like a baby?
So he brought up kids with stuffy nose and nasal decongestant. Just get the bulb syringe.
I don't know if my 14-year-old would be down with that, but maybe I'll hold him down and try.